is just hit record.
So is this like your regular venue, or are you just hire this for these?
Well, I hire this studio, but it's my regular. I moved from online during lockdown. I started the podcast and it was all on Zoom.
Okay.
And then I think after a while of anything like martial arts, like we'll talk about, you decide after a year, you go, do I still want to play? If I do, I'm going to have to deepen. I'm going to have to get better. Yeah. So I was like, right, I'll do it in the studio. One of the best decisions I've made. It's allowed me the opportunity to have conversations with people like yourself that I just wouldn't exist in the real world.
Yeah.
Which is quite sad, but it's just the way it is, yeah.
And it'd make a difference, like getting people in the room, did they open up more?
Definitely.
Did it change the whole dynamic of
the conversation's completely different. And there's an element now, people see it and they some people think, I wouldn't mind getting in that studio. Do you know what I mean? There's a little bit of that.
Yeah.
But the conversation's completely different.
Right.
Face-to-face combo. I'm reading a book at the minute about stolen focus, about how we're all struggling so much now to just concentrate on one thing at a time. And I know this to be true. I was trying to watch a film the other night and I was like, I had my phone next to me.
Yeah.
It was just to watch that film. It was 2 hours. Was incredibly challenging.
Yeah.
I can notice my own focus starting to spray, and it's quite normal, I think, in normal life. There's so much to do, right?
Yeah, it's definitely. We did something with one of our clients a couple of months ago, and we brought in an associate that works with us on the odd occasion, and her big focus is around unitasking and not trying to multitask, which is exactly the same thing.
Yeah.
So this whole notion of only being able to focus, give everything of yourself to that one task at that moment in time. And that might be only for a few seconds.
Sure.
You might be really busy with lots of things going on, but for that particular moment, you are focusing on that one thing and not trying to do multiple things at the same time.
Yeah, isn't there a difference between task switching though and like deep focus? So wouldn't deep focus require a bit more time?
Yeah, I guess so. And then you add into that how often you do it. So how instinctive has that task become? Because you could dive deeper if it's something that you do, every day, every hour of the day. Then you already. There's a lot of stuff happening for free that you're not having to consciously think about, I guess. So it's fascinating stuff.
Yeah. Have you ever read a book that's terrified you before?
Terrified me?
Yeah, like the reality of it. Because I'm reading one now.
What are you reading?
Called Stolen Focus.
Okay.
It talks about this, about our ability now to concentrate it's just gone. And even if we have these strategies in place of these focus blocks, that's cool, but are we capable?
Right.
And I thought this the other night when I was watching the film. I'm like, I've set some time away to watch a film, but to actually sit and concentrate on it. Yeah. And because we think about focus as like, doing a task and not being on our phone, but our mind wanders all the time too. So I know that I'm guilty of this. Like, I might be with my folks, but really I'm elsewhere. And
I'm terrible for that.
Of course, because it's carnage, and to expect to just put a timer on and go right for 30 minutes, I'm going to be in the zone. It's when you realise you're not very good at it, you kind of start to look at, well, why am I not very good at it? How do I get better at it?
Yeah, and you can help yourself. I think environment, setting yourself up for success. If you want to have 30 minutes of focus on something, or flow as they call it, where you get completely caught in the moment, it's like that whole analogy of I'm searching for a pencil, and in the process I end up tidying up my whole office. You just get completely swept away by the moment. So I think you can set an environment that helps set you up for success. Remove the distractions, turn the phone off, don't have the phone in the same room, turn your emails off so that you're not getting pings, and but still having that control to be able to not just drift off and think of other things.
See, I know that, right? And you know that. Do you do it?
I try. I'm getting better, I'll be honest.
This is what I'm saying.
Better, but I'm terrible.
It's tough, isn't it?
Don't buy a car off a mechanic. I'm like, don't take any.
Yeah, but you would probably say we're both disciplined people. I mean, you've got a black belt in 6 different martial arts. Like I'm disciplined in so many areas of my life. Yeah. But I think this is what the book was getting across. Like, culturally now, it's so hard to do those things. Yeah. And the biggest battle is that you work better when you do switch the emails off. Yeah. And we still catch ourselves like getting in this like buzz of like emails, phone, this task, that fire. It's crazy.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that probably touches on what my big passion is looking at how can I transfer skills from one area of my life or something I do into somewhere else. And I still can't. but you know, you just mentioned it, the martial arts. You know, there's a lot of lessons from that, more than just being able to, you know, hit hard. There's a lot of lessons from that should benefit every other area of your life if you're able to look at the process and not just the end result.
Yeah.
So, you know, me driving here today, getting here is great, but the process of getting here is where I can learn a lot. You know, I'm practicing my driving skill all the way here. I'm doing a lot of things that, you know, it's for me, it's understanding the process and knowing how you can then transfer it. You might need to adapt it and modify it for the other application, but yeah, I think otherwise it's an awful lot of time we waste doing one thing for one outcome when we could be benefiting other areas. You know what I mean? So I love that exactly. Transfer of skill, that cross training, if you like.
Yeah. No, I know totally what you mean. This is kind of how I've used physical fitness as an example of how a man can become more disciplined and be more consistent. So I think it's good to pick something that requires those skills, and then when you realise, I can be disciplined.
Yeah.
Like you say, you can look at other areas of your life and go, well, I know I've got that skill set. Yeah. How can I apply it to become the guy who's more focused? So,
absolutely.
By the way, thanks for and you sound like a very busy man.
Hey, we're all busy.
No, I appreciate you coming down.
Really fast, aren't we?
We are, and your bio to this episode was really difficult to write because you've done a lot of things. You've done a lot, man. I was like, wow.
I've slowed down.
Yeah.
I was very busy when I was. In my teens, early 20s, I felt like I was rushing to do as much as I could. I've definitely slowed down, and I struggle with that a bit because then I think, am I being lazy now and not cramming as much in as I used to, or have I actually just wised up a little bit and got the pace right? So yeah, it's my CV was very busy in those earlier years.
Yeah, I mean, I think of that as front loading, like especially in the physical world, like there's things you can do when you were 20 that you can't do when you're 50. so yeah, exactly. So it kind of makes sense to do the big challenges, get the black belts when you're young. Yeah. I mean, it's slightly different for you. I mean, you were thrown into the martial arts world when you were 12.
Yeah.
So I've just started BJJ. It's very can be demoralising because you're watching these young kids playing around on the mat. And you know they're going to be ninjas by the time they're my age, and I'm just starting the journey. Yeah. So I guess starting that as a 12-year-old, I think it's a good thing. I know it teaches discipline. I don't know how much say you had in your choice to do karate, or whether you were told you were going to karate.
That's like, you know, I love happy accidents. I love looking at stories where something's happened and it's turned out to be a really great result purely by accident. For me, that martial arts journey was a happy accident. It was, you know, as a 12-year-old, not even at an early age at school, I wasn't enjoying school. I just was bullied a bit, and so martial arts was like, right, I'm going to go and learn karate or learn something. I didn't even know what different martial arts there were. So it was pure chance that a neighbour of mine, bless her, she had said that you know, there was a martial arts class she had heard of that was like 10 minutes walk away from my house. It's probably the nearest club to my house. And myself and my sister, we just headed up there one Sunday morning just to have a look, and that ended up being, you know Jeff Thompson. It was his club, so it was pure chance. Had no idea what it was, what I was getting into. Certainly no idea what the future held following that first visit on that Sunday morning. So purely by chance, but I like to think a real happy accident at that point.
It's quite innate in us, isn't it? As a young boy, you kind of watch the Karate Kid and stuff, and I think most lads get bullied or they have maybe altercations or run-ins with other lads, and you know that helpless feeling when you don't know how to fight or someone. And again, I'm experiencing that now at 38 at BJJ.
Yeah, well, you've picked one of the toughest arts to dive straight into.
I love it.
It is one of the more challenging in terms of the mental game. You know, it's my goodness, when when we started to move into the grappling arts, I think I had the toughest mental challenges during that period was getting into the Greco wrestling, freestyle wrestling. We were doing some judo, dabbling with some Brazilian jiu-jitsu, but we didn't really know that much what we were doing on the ground. But I went through a period of just for like what felt like years, not winning a single fight. It was, I'd get off the mat and I'd be crying because I'd be like, I just can't get this to work. It just won't work for me. And it was such a tough time, mentally, to get through that and to keep coming back. And in the end, it paid off. But it was that was probably, the mental game in my martial arts career, 30 odd years. That was a tough period. It was it's a challenging world to be when you're rolling around on the mat.
When you say it paid off, what do you mean?
Yeah, because I think like you never quite know when you're at the point of breakthrough, and you don't know whether it's going to be another 2 years of suffering or two more minutes, and the next fight you're suddenly something's going to click. So I just had to have faith that it would click eventually. And for me, what made it more difficult, I think, why that journey was tough, was because I was always the young one in the club, always fighting adults, always fighting blokes. And even when I was adult, I was still small for my age. So, I was like, late developer and always little. So, I was always at a disadvantage. And I think that just made it again, that paid off, because then when it came to having, real fights, there was no one I came up against for real that matched anyone that I'd been training with for many, many years. And I was so used to fighting above my weight, fighting above my skill level, that when I finally met someone my own skill or my own age or my own size, it was like my birthday. So I look back on it and think, that was just tough, and it was a great way of conditioning and hardening. But it was difficult at the time.
Of course, there's something to be said for that tough education, though, isn't there? It's like we talked about transferable skills. Is that now a blueprint for you, where you have to go through that in business? That do you throw yourself in the deep end of anything, maybe against the odds, so that when you come out the other end, you're better through it? Or looking back, if you were advising someone else, for example, who was getting into martial arts, would you go, no, a bit more slow and steady, let's creep you in, let's get some pad work on the go first, let's match you up with someone your own size and ability first? Like, what do you...
It's a real difficult one, because, I think, again, I probably don't listen to my own advice. As an instructor, and particularly the arts I study, or, I study now or study most recently, I think they're a lot gentler, and I think we approach it with a lot more about the art than just is this going to work outside? Let's make it real. Let's, and I really enjoy that. Now, whether I enjoy that because I've earned my right to be in that world now, I've gone through the tough bit, and but actually when I'm teaching it, crikey, I couldn't even consider taking a student or a group of students on like an animal day, the all-out fighting we used to do. I just wouldn't see benefit in it for them. But maybe that's just because I've had the luxury of going through it, and I'm too soft now. I don't know. Maybe they do need it, and I'm just being a bad instructor by not making that. But I think there's other ways you can put pressure on students and help them grow in perhaps a safer, gentler way. Having said that, when I transfer it to like the corporate world, or anything in outside of martial arts, my career, I still think I'm measured. I won't take crazy risks. I won't throw myself totally out of my depth. But I think what the martial arts stuff has done from an early year, that building that foundation, I think it's given me that courage. I think it's given me that confidence, and that perhaps that little bit of brave pill to be prepared to say yes when you're not quite sure you can do it. Get in front of the the board, get in the boardroom when you're feeling really nervous, or get on stage when you're not comfortable speaking. I think it's given me that brave pill, if you like, to say, look, you've dealt with stuff that's way scarier than this in the past. So I guess the summary for me is that the stuff I've done in the past, and bearing in mind I'm working with people now that have done far scarier things than I've ever done. So I'm very mindful that I don't want to big myself up into this, this incredible individual that's done crazy stuff. But I think some of the stuff that I've done that has been quite fearful has changed my scale of what is comfortable and what is scary. You just move the dial. And so then what might be scary to someone else may not be, or maybe something I can handle more. might just be as frightened, but I've dealt with things that are more fearful. So suddenly that now sits like middle of my scale rather than the most scary thing on the planet that I never want to go near. So it adjusts your scale, so then you can start to embrace things that you perhaps would shy away from before. I'm probably a really long way of answering.
No. It makes total sense, and I can see the downside to not doing that too, because it means that your tolerance for fear starts to lower. So yes, again, talking about transferable skills, and everyone's so different, aren't they? So the amount of heat for you might be great, but that amount of heat might crush me at that. Yeah. So you imagine doing animal day now with your guys, probably what 95% would leave. I know. I know I would probably take a dive. Yeah, I'll probably go. Actually, this isn't kind of what I came for. However, if I'm not challenged and I'm not growing, I will also run out the back door because it's not doing anything for me.
Well, you know this more than anyone. The world that you're in when it comes to physical training, nothing sits still, and I think everything you do, if you ease off, you lose the edge, you lose that sharpness. Blades dull even over time without being used. So I think that there's a need to just keep going back and spinning that plate every now and then, just so that you know it's there, it's ready to go. Same as anything, you got to stay in the gym and work out even just to maintain. If you stop, boom.
So was the animal day thing? Did you know you were going to grow from that, or were you led down that path? And did you have any idea what the outcome would be and what you were going to learn about yourself?
No, I think it's the quick answer. But I think to kind of clarify, so for those that aren't aware, Animal Day was basically, it was like a UFC before that ever existed in a martial arts dojo in Coventry. So we would all turn up, a bit like the film Fight Club, actually, again, before that film ever existed. We'd turn up, we'd match off, and as few rules as possible, while still keeping it, safe-ish. You've still got to go to work on Monday, or school on Monday, in my case. But you would have one fight, two fights, you'd be paired off, you wouldn't know who you're going to fight, and you would fight without rounds. It would just be until someone either submits, gets knocked out, or, gives in some way or other. So it was done in order to test the arts that we were training. Do they work in a more realistic environment than your stereotypical martial arts sparring type? Even getting in the ring, boxing still got rules. It's still got a referee. It's still got things. So we were trying to make it real. But actually, for me, it crept up on me because when I started with Jeff Thompson at the age of 12, we were very much a traditional karate class. Traditional, I'd say traditional in the truest sense. It was a very strong class. It was Shotokan karate, so it's quite a powerful art anyway. But it was done like the old days. We were fighting, we were hitting with as much power as we could muster. It was very, very heavy. I knew no different. It was the only class I'd ever been to. I assumed this is what every martial arts was like. Our Animal Day started by just having sessions where all we did was fight. We would all be partnered off, so we would it would be sparring. The whole class would be sparring, but it would be the control would be allowed to grow. The pressure would be allowed to grow. So in the end, everyone was pretty much having real fights in the gym, and it was only later. So that became normal. We'd go to the class for like an hour and a half, 2 hours. We would do 2 hours of 2 or 3 minute rounds of fighting back to back throughout, and the break you'd get would be enough time to go and grab a new partner. And so I think that was far tougher, far harder than the Animal Days physically. When Animal Day then became a thing, it got a bit more structure. People were coming to visit the club to have a go, and it became more like you'd probably do 1 or 2 fights. For me, I'd done probably like 30 fights on a Sunday morning session before. So literally I'd go to school, or when I was left school at 16, go to work as an apprentice. I'd be slurring my words on a Monday morning because I'd been knocked out more times than I could count the Sunday. Which is not healthy, kids. So I think Animal Day for me was just like physically, it was actually quite easy. It was perhaps more psychologically challenging because it became a thing. And so you would build up to Animal Day. You'd know a couple of weeks in advance it's happening. You knew that there may be visitors that you'd never met before to your club. So it became more of a mental game and a mental test rather than a physical one. The physical for me had happened years earlier when we had, just some amazing, tough individuals in the club, and I was still a schoolboy. So yeah, it was an interesting one. But at the time, no, for me, I actually just thought this is what martial arts is. I had no idea we were doing something different or something that was going to have an amazing impact on my life down the line. I was kind of just in it and just going with the flow. And yeah, it's when I look back, I'm very grateful for it because I know how it's shaped me and had an influence. There's bits that it shaped me that I'm not happy with, and that's probably why I wouldn't recommend students do it now with me. I wouldn't want to be the custodian of that because I think that amount of pressure at a young age, I'm not going to say there's PTSD there because people, like I say, certainly I know have had far worse experiences, but that pressure over a young age, week after week after week, it grows a muscle, but I think it grows some scar tissue as well. There's something there that I think it's fatigued me in some ways. Yeah. Which is, I've never really thought about, but yeah.
Well, that makes sense because as you're telling me, there's part of me that sounds like excited and up for it and like, oh, that sounds great. And then there's part of me that's like, that's terrifying. Like, no young guy should really have to go through that. So it's kind of a conflict, a split, because I was there at school, doing none of that stuff.
Right.
Just scared of everything, basically.
Yeah.
And you're doing the opposite. You're running into all that fear, all that damage. I mean, the idea of getting knocked out over and over again, we know now it's not good, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
It's not good. But is it more damaging to avoid those things at all costs? So I had a terrible late teens, early 20s, even into my 30s with fear and anxiety because I'd never experienced it.
Yeah,
I'd never tasted fear. I did everything I could to dodge those things. And not those things, everything. Anything that caused any fear.
Right.
And I'm talking the smallest things, like if walking up the shop, if there was 4 lads stood on the corner, I wouldn't go to the shop.
Right.
So I'd be scared in case they said something, let alone did something. That kind of fear. The fear to go on a plane, the fear to drive a car. All those things that stop me doing those things. So you end up just shrinking your life down. So... it's one of those, isn't it? It's like...
yeah, I think, it's... to be able to broaden your horizons by growing a little bit of confidence, getting a little bit of, courage to say yes to things is great. But I think, being too confident, can certainly put you in bad places. And so it's getting that balance. And I think, yourself, if I was to come to you, you wouldn't throw 200 kilos on the bar and expect me to bench it. It would crush me straight away. So I think the same with anything you're doing, any type of training, whether it's physical or psychological, mental training, building courage, you've got to do it in steps. You've got to do it in very small increments and be really careful with it, that you're not putting people too much under pressure.
Yeah.
I would walk to our karate club on a Sunday morning that started at 9. Dreading the session. I loved the arts, I always have, but I knew it was going to hurt. I knew it was going to be tough. I'd be dreading whether certain individuals were going to show up, hoping that when 5 minutes before the class starts, they haven't walked through the door yet. Oh, maybe that individual's not coming today because he or she always smashes me in half with their back kick or something. And then the door would open, they'd come through and your heart would sink even further. So, but yeah, I still kept going back and maybe I'm a glutton for punishment. As I got older, I genuinely would drive to some of our sessions where kind of hoping for a car crash, a legitimate excuse to say, oh, I can't make it after all, car's broke down, oh, I've crashed. Would be like looking for an excuse not to be there, but yet would somehow still keep moving forwards and getting there. And that's weird. There's like there's like 2 bits of my brain working against each other, but one still just getting the edge and getting me through that door.
Again, very normal.
Yeah.
I was rolling last night. I was hoping that there wouldn't be many people there.
Right.
I was hoping that I would have a partner to roll with, because sometimes there's odd numbers. And again, that's just like the flashback to me at school, you know. Then I'm hoping that like that guy doesn't call me out to roll with him, because he choked me out last week, and it was even at 38, it's still there. But like you say, you kind of just have an acceptance that that's there now, and you do that shit anyway. Whereas I think the guy who's not used to being conditioned to fear would probably be the guy that didn't go to the club.
Yeah.
And that's the kind of thing. Because what you've described isn't tiptoe courage, it's being thrown in at the deep end.
Yeah.
And I think this might come down to your ambitions in life. So I think if you're, I want to make the most out of every life, I'm not sure the tiptoe thing works. I think sometimes you might have to go, right, I'm in.
Yeah, well, what's that saying in American baseball? You can't steal second base and keep your foot on first. Some point you've got to go for it. Some point you've got to commit.
If you want a certain outcome, I think that's the thing. I always remember Jeff saying about he thrived rolling with people that would beat him up in judo when he went. You know, he didn't want to do white level.
He went to some tough class.
He went straight to Neil Adams and he got battered by the best. And after 2 years, he could roll with them, you know, he could hang with them. So I like that theory. However, I always question, are many people actually capable of mixing with the big boys like that? Because I love the theory, but practically doing that, like you say, it's every day. You wake up, tears, like fear. Perhaps there's PTSD that hangs around with that. I'm not sure. Problem with PTSD is we always look at what other people have been through, and then we think what we've been through is nothing. I mean, from what you're telling me, it does sound fucking terrifying. You know, getting knocked out every weekend. Because imagine that would cause me a bit of trauma.
Well, obviously, my sister, my sister's Jeff's partner, and it was funny because she was very protective of me when we were little. We started our martial arts journey on the same day. She's 4 years older than me. Always gutted that she got her black belt 3 months before I did, because she double graded at the very beginning. So she was always better than me. But she used to be very protective, and she was. At one stage, she was very angry with Jeff that it felt like he was bullying me. It felt like in the class and we had 20, 30, 40 people every week in the class. It was a tough old class. But it felt, and perhaps looked to the outside, that Jeff was going particularly hard on me, more than anyone else. And maybe it's just because he could hit me easier and I kept getting knocked out more than anyone else. But but he was. We chatted quite a lot since, and he was just trying to develop me. He was trying to grow me. He was pushing me harder, and for quite a while, I was. It was just Jeff and I training together. We were experimenting with different arts and get together, in his gym. Just drill some of the wrestling stuff before it ended up finding its way into our classes. And he was clearly just trying to toughen me up, and I needed toughening up. It was bizarre because when I was 16, I was already a black belt in my first art. I've been training for now 4 years in this really tough club, fighting anyone that was in front of me, win or lose. And yet at school I was still bullied, and which is why I left school at 16. But bullied psychologically. I wasn't, I think I had one fight at school, and I did all right in that. But that was only because I was absolutely back to the wall forced, and I hated my secondary school. It was awful for me personally. People get bullied a lot worse. I understand that. So it was weird that at that point I wasn't able to transfer that expertise, or that experience rather. I wasn't able to transfer the tough hardiness that I was exhibiting when I was going to these tough martial arts classes. I wasn't able to find a way of transferring that courage and apply it to a different environment. Now I think I'm better at that. I think maybe that was the catalyst to figure out, okay, why couldn't you do that, Al? Why did you have to run away from school rather than use the courage that you show in the martial arts? So I think maybe that triggered me to look into that a bit more and make that my thing, so.
Yeah, well, I've learnt that being able to fight doesn't solve all your problems. There's still that scared little kid inside of even the hardest of men. But it's interesting what you say about the tough, having a tough mentor. I mean, I dip in and out of Jeff's world because he is so demanding, even on a spiritual level. There's things he's advised that I do not on a physical level, that have just been so difficult to do. Even I remember as a young guy going to see him, and I was working through some shit, and he said, "Look, Alex, like, no porn in your life. It's feeding all this ugly stuff inside of you." And even at that age, it was like no one had ever made that demand of me. It was like, you know, that's the wrong thing to do. Stop doing it.
Yeah.
He was so straight, so cut all the bullshit. He didn't flirt with any of that. It was like rum. He's like, I know what you need. This is it. Come back and see me when you've done it, kind of thing. It was. But I do like that in a mentor. I do like to get straight to the essence.
Yeah, I think so. Just because a lot of it's noise and a lot of it's excuses for why you're not doing a certain thing that you're telling yourself. So at some point you just got to be brutally honest with yourself and go, right, what is it I need to change?
Or you need someone else to do that for you, Al, because like you say, those excuses, they sound so legitimate in your own head.
Yeah.
And in your world, because everything is in our head, that's our world. If they sound real to you, that they're real in your world, even if they're absolute bullshit. So when someone comes along and tears them down, one, it's difficult to hear. And then you question them, and then if you have the faith in them. So there's some mentors you have faith in, don't you? They're telling me this for a reason. They want me to grow. They want me to develop, and they're probably wiser than I am.
Yeah, and that's, I think, you know, when I look back at my early years in martial arts with Jeff, that was very much the case. He was without question the biggest influence in my life to date. He, you know, at formative years, 12 years of age onwards, with someone who I was training with 6 times a week, who was someone that I admired, looked up to, was doing all the tough things, you know, was kind of what I wanted to be. I wanted to be the tougher, you know, person in charge of my life, not scared of anyone. You know, his world at the time was, you know, door work and all that kind of stuff. So he was massively influential. He was definitely my mentor at the time, and it's sad we kind of grew apart, but yeah, completely credit him for, you know, for that journey, for having, you know, for seeing that I could become something in that world, and helping me, guiding me, giving me so much of his time. And yeah, blind, you know, I was blind faith. You know, it was like, yeah, Jeff says do that, I'm doing it. You know, I'm trusting him. And the best bit was he was doing it. So he wasn't just, you know, he wasn't the fat lifestyle coach. He was living it as well. He was truly leading by example, which was, you know, something, you know, that I've taken with me, you know, in everywhere else I've gone, and I'm really cool with the people I'm working with now that's exactly their whole philosophy. Yeah, you know, kind of leading to serve, or serving to lead rather, but leading from the front. You know,
sure.
That being able to say, you know, I'm not just going to tell you to do something if I'm not prepared or haven't done it myself. I wouldn't do an Animal Day fight now, but if I was to say to someone, this is what it is, this is what it looks like, I can do it from a place of credibility because I genuinely have been there. So it's I think it's that it was that blind faith with him at the time, and trusting him as my guide, if you like. Yeah,
sure. I was reading an interesting book the other week about how children learn. It was basically saying, look, the words that you put in their head are not really going to count for much. What they will do, they will look around, they will watch, they will learn that way. So if you're a parent, for example, dishing out advice on like, oh, you know, come on, kid, you should exercise, you should eat well whilst you're eating a pizza. Those words from in one ear out the other, but what they see, that will really stick with them. So if kind of like if we went through like the upside to doing all that tough training, I can easily see how it would benefit your life, like the resilience, the courage, the toughness. But you mentioned that there were some areas that it wasn't so positive. So like where did they show up, or where do they show up now, those areas?
So this is a terrible analogy, because I was never an elite athlete in my heyday, but if you were to get a thoroughbred racehorse and put a novice rider on that horse, it would not be that horse is not good for cruising around on and trotting and going on a bit of a pony track. It's a machine that's going flat out or zero. And I think there's times when, so you know, massive caveat on that I've never been an elite athlete. But I think there's times when I perhaps lacked that ability to just trot and roll along rather than just go at things like a bull in a china shop. And so, yeah, probably I don't know how to articulate it, but I think there's a lack of ability to relax and just go with the flow. Almost, I'm getting better. I think just perhaps as I'm getting older and physically, I have no choice. But there's definitely been times where I think, looking back, if only I could have, if I'd have just bit my lip, if I'd have just calmed down a little bit and not been so quick to judge or quick to get in there. And I think some of that's from those early days of it's really hard to explain, but I think there's definitely something there that's perhaps made me too quick and edgy and reactive and not able to just go with the flow a little bit. And maybe it was, from all the fighting, you're trying to take control, you're trying to take charge. Any individual fight, you want to manage that fight, you want to be the boss of that fight, whether that means you slow it down or you speed it up, but you want to be in control of it. And so then times when you perhaps need to be more of a passenger, and you can't be the driver, you can't control, I think that's where I perhaps struggle, because then I feel like it's out of my hands, and yet, we all do that. So I think there's elements of that. I've probably not explained it at all anywhere near well, but I definitely think there's like scars, for want of a better expression, from that kind of intense activity for that period of time, at that time in my life as well, quite a formative time, that I think, I said to an old boss a long time ago, he was surrounded by a team, including me, of quite big characters. We were, I like to think, quite courageous in our work. So we would be prepared to stand up to people. We would stand our corner, and we would speak up in meetings. And we were all fairly big characters. When we were facing out, we were like his guard dogs. We protected him from all the grief from all the politics and all the corporate grief. Any challenge he had, we could back him up. We were his team. We were his guard dogs. But one meeting he said to us, he said, "You're all too thorny. Because I really struggle to manage you," because we would challenge him. We weren't scared to question his decisions as our boss, as our line manager. And he was like, "You're just too hard to work with." And I said, "We're your guard dogs. We can protect you, but the problem is you have to watch your fingers when you feed us." Mm-hmm. And so I think there's perhaps a little bit of that in me, that I'm kind of like the guard dog, but just I'm perhaps not the best person to be the to watch your fingers when you feed me kind of thing. You know what I mean? I don't know. I love that terrible analogy.
No, I like that. The way I see it in my own development is a bit like a pendulum, where like I started off like at such a low level, so low in aggression, so low in courage. Yeah. And I've spent 20, 30 years trying to get braver, and I've kind of swung this way. And I feel like now it just needs to come back to middle. Yeah. Because like you say, I can catch myself probably having less empathy than I should, being more reactive than I should, thinking that everyone thinks like me, that everyone should be like that, everyone should be tough, everyone should fight, everyone should learn, everyone should drive, do you know what I mean? And now there's not much room, or I haven't left much room for weakness, or what I perceive as weakness. Yeah. I spoke about this word weakness the other day with my therapist, Aidan. And he was like, if you make that word neutral versus the enemy, you can view it slightly different. So one of the things, and I don't know if you can relate to this, Al, but as you get older, you start to notice your physical capabilities starting to slow down. Mm-hmm. And if you've made that your number one thing, your number one asset, then you start to see that evaporate slowly. You become fearful. You're like, the thing that makes me tough is my physical capability. Yeah. What's left if that doesn't hold? Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. And it's not just physical, in careers, and from my own personal experience, moving out of somewhere that, you've had plenty of years experience, you've been pretty senior at, to move into a different sector or a different type of role, suddenly you feel quite exposed. And then what made you who you were, or so you thought, suddenly has been removed. We see it a lot now with some of the people that we work with at Fieri. We one area of work that we do is what we call transition, where people, it stemmed from people coming out of the military and going into the corporate world. It's such a huge transition from, you know, what they're used to and from the environment they're in, the people they're surrounded by, what their typical day would look like, to going into the corporate world. It's quite different. It's a huge number of transferable skills, which is brilliant, but it's how, you know, they acclimatise, if you like, to this new environment. So we do work in that space. But then when you look at, well, what transition could be, someone moving out of education into the corporate world for the first time. It's a very different environment from being at school or college or uni. But then even just moving up the ladder, moving up the career ladder, going from being on a production line to being a team leader, it's that transition, that change of environment, that change of altitude suddenly, you know, leaves people exposed. We see it now with some of the what we call frontline leaders. A good example is a frontline leader who's a couple of tiers up from, let's say, shop floor level. They've often been promoted because of their expertise, their years of experience on the line. So they've been promoted up to manage now a team, which is potentially new to them. Whenever it goes wrong, they revert back to the operational, the bit they know well, which is, right, well, let's just get on the line, let's fix this problem. Because they revert back to type, if you like. And our job is to help teach them and give them the knowledge and the skills to be more of a leader, to be able to still stay overseeing and helping manage and direct and organise and manage upwards and communicate with the bosses, and not feel that the safest place to be is to go straight back into the operational. And so helping people with that transition is key. And so that exposes then the fact that the moment we do something different, we could potentially lose a bit of our identity or what makes us feel comfortable, because that's the bit, you know, that we thought we were, you know, working the doors. You know, I used to lead 3 lives, basically. There was like 3 Als. It's probably more now. I'd be Al at home with my family and my parents. I would be a different Al in the daytime in the corporate world. I had to be more middle class. I had to use, you know, sound different, speak differently, wear different clothes. And then I'd go and work, you know, 5 nights a week on the door as well, and had to be a different Al again, because Al at home wouldn't really fit in that environment. The language I used from Al at work would definitely not survive on the door, because of that perception of, you know, certain language makes you sound weak. So yeah, I had to be these 3 different people. As soon as I stopped doing the door work, and when that became like a big part of my identity, I was like, oh, okay, I'm in a world now that doesn't count for anything. No one knows who I was on the door when I'm back in the office. So I've got it. So yeah, I think you've got to be really mindful of, you know, who are you, and don't let the things around you define you, because then that makes it really difficult to transition into other things.
That's really interesting what you've just said there. Do you think the goal then should be to merge those eyes into one, so that you can be what we might refer as that true authentic self, or do you think that that's a totally normal, acceptable part of life, where you are split into 3, 4, 5 different characters?
I think that, and this is only me personally, and so like, I don't want to be this pseudo psychologist or anything, because I really am not. I think you need to be honest with yourself. You need to have your own identity. I think you need to, wherever possible, you've got to keep that integrity. So you've got to be, you know, I need to be the same Al wherever I am, but I'm also mindful that I need to adapt and adjust my style depending on the circumstance. So we do a lot of work with leaders, managers, team leaders, people in charge of or working with other people, working in teams, leading from within, leading from, you know, below the team. Leadership's all about understanding the individuals in your team, getting to know them as well as you can individually, in order that then you can nurture each individual member of your team and get the best out of them, and then you can bring them together as a group and figure out how they can each fill in the gaps, and almost like pieces of a jigsaw, how they can come together and really gel and deliver as a high performance team. But you can only really do that if you know the individual, so you know where they fit and where they perhaps won't fit, you know, what their strengths and weaknesses are. Each individual requires you to you know, the best way to get something out of someone is to build rapport, you know, get trust with that person. That might mean you need to speak differently. You might need to engage with them in a different way, because they as a personality, they welcome or reject different types of influence. So some people like someone on their shoulder driving them hard. Keep me honest, keep me going because I need the motivation. Some are like, stay away, leave me to it, I know what I'm doing here. And they would see that as disruptive. So as a leader, you've got to be able to adapt. You can't expect everyone else to align with your style. You're the only thing that can change there. You're the only thing you've got real control of. So you have to adapt your style to get the best out of people. That may sound fake, but I think as long as it's still done with a core, like, you know, that place of love, you know, it's done by genuinely who you are. You're just very good at being able to bend, and it's like being a multi-tool. It does lots of different jobs, but it doesn't mean it's a fake tool. It works, you know. You're able to adapt to the situation.
Okay.
So yeah, I think there's a real thing for that. Sometimes you've got to know when to switch on, and sometimes you've got to know when to relax. With your martial arts, exactly the same. You're rolling with that one person on the mat. There will be points during that roll where you need to suddenly fire up. You suddenly need to like shock them and go, "Geez, this guy's got some energy." And there's other times you go, "Do you know what? I can lay back here." And I can, that's still you. You're just operating differently based on the environment and the circumstance.
Yeah, I see it as a bit of a split. So if you go back to like the archetypes of like warrior, lover, magician, like the warrior side is what I've been training for a long time, but it's been at the sacrifice of, say, lover, for example, or other parts of my life. So I'm actually, you know, I'm not married, I haven't got kids. I put all my energy into becoming this tougher person. So that kind of like penknife analogy, that multi-tool thing makes sense to me. It's like there's certain area of us that might need more nurturing than others. I think if we just concentrate on one area, we can become really strong in that, to our detriment though.
Yeah.
Where it kind of tips over the scales and you become too physical. That becomes your thing. And like you say, then your identity is dependent on it. And anything that threatens that, you're like, shit, fuck, I can't lose it.
Yeah.
And it's a bit like the guy who is motivated by money and he's broke and then he works so hard to get all the money, and then it's the money that terrifies him because he's scared to lose it. Because if he loses the money, he's a fucking failure.
Yeah.
The money was what made him a success. So it's kind of balancing all these things. So I've never known really whether you try and merge into this one identity.
Yeah.
You know, is that more vulnerable, or do you have various identities? So if one dies, you're cool because you've still got Al at home, or you've still got Al at work. Yeah. If the physical side goes, it's
absolutely.
I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, one of our team, KP, she's an absolute legend, and she, on one of her keynotes, she talks about, I think it was something that was said to her when she was going through a tough time, and you know, she uses it in her keynote, which is just you're more than what you do. So I think, and that's not just for everyone else to understand that, but that's important for you to understand. So that, you know, what you do just isn't all that defines you. And
what else does define you then, if it's not what you do? See, I like these quotes and cliches. And when someone says it, I'm like, that's true and it's great. But then when I dig a bit deeper, I'm like, okay, well, if what you do doesn't define you, what does?
So I'd say, you know, if you were to follow that track, then maybe how you do it is perhaps a better definition than what you do or what you did. It's, you know, how you approach things, because then what you do, it kind of doesn't matter whether you're successful at it or not. It's how did you approach that? What kind of person were you when you took on that challenge? Firstly, did you take on the challenge? Secondly, then how did you go about it? Were you methodical? Did you think it through? Did you go and get support? Were you able to accept instruction and advice from others? Were you able to recognize your own weaknesses where you needed help? You know, the whole process of taking on a challenge. That's, I think, a better if you're choosing anything, a better definition of an individual, or a better way of seeing an individual than whether they were successful or not at the end.
Yeah.
And maybe that's one thing to think about.
I think that's great. I think you've defined that perfectly, because that's the essence of the better man. Really, we're not. Yes, we like outcomes and we like goals, but it's more about our behaviour on a day-to-day. Like, who are we? Like, how do we treat others? How do we treat ourselves?
Yeah.
Can I say I've worked hard today, regardless of the outcome?
Yeah.
Because I think every man can go to, put his head on a pillow at night and sleep okay, even if he's failed, but he's tried his best. There's something integrally rewarding about that. Giving your best. That's why martial arts is a great example. Even if you do get beat up, but like, there's something in you that knows you've had the courage to show up again, and get beat up again, and you're going back again. There's something rewarding in that, which is probably what you touched to earlier. How can you get smashed up for 2 years and keep going back? Because I think intrinsically there's something that says I'm being strong here, I'm being brave,
Absolutely.
I'm being courageous. And this is why I see a lot of guys get depressed when they don't have that, when they know they're not getting out of bed, they know they're not facing up to what needs facing up to, they know they're not giving their best, they know they're not living a life that they're going to be proud of. And it's horrible, it's painful, because there's going to be regret there. I think we'll all have that regret, but I think there's a lot of people now, suffering unnecessarily, more so than they need to, because they're just not applying themselves like they could, and that what would make them proud, really.
Yeah, I think it's getting that balance, isn't it? That doing it, putting yourself under pressure too much, too frequently is exhausting. You got to know when you do need your recovery days, when you need a rest, when you need a breather. I think also people can be too quick to beat themselves up if they don't step up an opportunity. They bottle it. And I think, if you're doing that constantly, then you need to have a word with yourself or get someone to have a word with you. But on the first occasion when you bottle it, don't be so hard on yourself, because there'll be plenty more opportunities just coming around the corner. We always do stuff in our classes when we're asking for volunteers, and when people don't volunteer, it was fear that stopped them from volunteering. You go, don't sweat it. It's fine. It's fine if you failed on this opportunity. I presented you an opportunity to step up. It's fine if you bottled out. It's fine if fear got a grip, because trust me, there'll be another opportunity in a few minutes time, and then again after that, and again after that. At some point, what you see those people when they're trying to learn to skip and they're spinning the rope and they just don't know when to jump in. At some point you will. You just got to get there.
Do you think though? So I agree and disagree. Everything's so paradoxical. I agree with that. There will be another opportunity. But one of my clients said something to me, and it's always stuck with me. His therapist said to him, never say no to something you want to do just because of fear. Because what will happen is, everything starts to shrink. So I know that if I say no to one thing, and then I say no to a second, it's more likely to start that momentum. So I'm kind of like, of course there's an opportunity. Don't beat yourself up. Like, we can go again. But part of me is also thinking, no, you need to be really careful. You can say, it's okay to say no to this, but then what happens when it comes up again and you use the same excuse? So there's that mixture, that cocktail of real tough love,
absolutely,
and a little bit of like being okay, cool with yourself, being kind, like you would with a good friend. You wouldn't smash them up,
exactly,
but you wouldn't also tolerate their bullshit if you really cared for them. So it's such a fine line.
Oh, totally,
And you never know which one's right. And what fucks with my head most is how like every decision you make changes the entire course of your life. Everything. You left your house a minute earlier this morning. Your life's different. I can't get my head around this. Like, this is the kind of shit that I'll sit there and think about this and it really messes me up. I'm like, I go out this building and go right instead of left. It's a different world.
Totally.
How crazy is that? How insane is that?
In good and bad ways. Because,
who knows?
Who knows? Because you might have turned left and been suddenly thrust in a position where you could help someone.
Well,
or
if we talk about
left and got hit by a car,
right? So if we divorce, right? Horrible, stressful as fuck, right? But I'm guessing you met Louise after that. Happy, right?
Lots changed. Lots changed after that. That wouldn't have if that hadn't happened. But a horrible thing for everyone concerned.
Sure. So we trace back in these dark moments, and then suddenly it's that dark moment that's led us to this great moment. It's crazy, and you just never know how things would
so here's how I put that into. So I do a lot of work. Kind of going back into schools and using for whatever story I've got through my career as a way of trying to excite these young talent, young students and young engineers, mostly because my background's engineering, trying to excite them about the world of getting more into engineering and what the opportunities are when they leave school. When I look at my career, I put a little chart up that shows my journey, the companies I've worked at, how long I've been there. And when I look, when I look at all the different roles, the different industry sectors that I've worked in, it looks quite meandering. It looks like I've never really found my place. Motorsport, 15 or so years, about half my career in motorsport. But even then, I dipped my toe in other things. I was bouncing around. And yet, when you see some people who, even at school, they go, I want to be a lawyer, or I want to be an accountant, or I want to be this, or a doctor, or what, and they just go, boom, laser focus, straight at it. And so I always chat to the students and go, hands up, who knows what you want, what they want to become? What do you want to do when you leave school? And you often see, more hands stay down than go up. So many don't actually know what they want to do yet. And my message is just then don't sweat it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Be patient, because I was trying to rush when I was younger. That's why my CV is quite full of stuff. But what I always say is, if I now in 30 years of my career have landed in the place that I was meant to be, and someone else 30 years earlier found theirs, so that they've got 30 years head start on me, they've landed straight in the job they always wanted, and I've spent a long time finding my way. It's like going to a party. We've both ended up at the fun place. We've both ended up where we wanted to be. They got there earlier. I've arrived late, but I like to think I picked up a lot more stories to tell along the way. And so we both end up having a good time at the party, I think. So there's no right or wrong. And if I kick myself for not making a certain decision, for not turning right out of here when I left, if I kick myself for that, don't sweat it, because you'll still end up where you're meant to be.
Yeah, absolutely.
My nan said, "What's meant for you won't pass you by," and so it might not come right when you're hoping for it, but sure, you're where you're meant to be.
But if you think what adventure is, it's kind of the unknown that excites a lot of people about adventure. So we all crave certainty, we all think we want it, but if you actually think about this, if life was really certain, how it was going to pan out, it'd be dull as fuck, you just wouldn't want to live it. It's like, that's part of the excitement.
It's learning, isn't it?
It is.
Finding new stuff.
Well, if you think what a good fight is, so when you watch Wilder versus Fieri, people pay, there was 80,000 people in that stadium to watch a fight that you didn't know who was going to win. And that's the excitement. Yeah. You're like, is
Neither did the two in the ring.
Yeah, is Wilder going to catch him and knock him out, or is Fury going to box his? You just didn't know. Yeah. And that's, if we knew that Fury was going to smash his head in and it was going to be smooth, plain sailing, you just wouldn't watch it. So it's kind of that analogy of that. It's like, it's a mixture of all that stuff of like, where is it going to go? Where's life going to take me?
Yeah.
Like that's what we should, it's easier said than done, be kind of excited by.
It's a great example of that. And I don't know how accurate this is, so bear with me. But many years ago, I met very briefly a guy called Felix Baumgartner, and he was the rebel athlete who jumped, parachuted or skydived from the edge of space, 10 miles up.
I saw that.
And he did that. And I think it was one of the very first live streams on YouTube. And it had 10 million people dialing in, watching his whole ascent and then the jump.
Yeah, was Red Bull linked?
Yeah, so Red Bull basically funded the whole adventure.
Wow.
Fascinating project. But as rumour has it, someone could probably check this out, but as rumour has it, when his parachute opened, 2 million people turned off.
No way.
So that's how disinterested we are when we know the inevitable outcome.
Wow.
So it kind of shows that...
So that was he's safe, he's going to land.
Parachute, so because he started, when he jumped, he went into this crazy spin, and so it was like, now there's jeopardy. Now it's quite traumatic. As soon as the parachute opened, a fifth of the audience went, it'll be fine now, let's turn off, go and put the kettle on.
That's crazy.
It's mad, isn't it?
Yeah,
but it reinforces the fact that actually we do want a bit of unknown, we do want some uncertainty, and that keeps us
do you know what, I'll watch that video and I'm now wondering when I turned off. Because you're right, it's almost like the first part of the journey is the one of most interest. When it was new, I was like, I thought this can't be real at first. And then I looked into it, and it was
Yeah.
fucking unbelievable.
Incredible. And he's not the first person to do that. The guy in the there was a guy an American test pilot, much older, done it years and years and years earlier, that was probably even more courageous back then with the technology, and but it's fascinating.
Yeah, humans are weird though, aren't they? I mean,
just
yeah, part of me is like, wow, that's insane, incredible. The other part of me is like, what the fuck are you doing, man? Why do you want to do that shit?
There's millions of books trying to figure out how we actually operate. It's crazy.
Well, the only thing I can think of is like, we know we're going to die, so we go like, what can I do that's just going to kind of like distract me from all that and be worth living for? It's the only thing I can think of.
Yeah, I think so. Just,
we have to create our own purpose, I guess, right? I'm
Yeah.
not sure I'm buy into this whole we've all got a purpose thing. I think we're bundled together on this earth. We have to create something worth living for.
Yeah, it was. I can't remember his name, but there was a guy I used to watch loads of stuff of his years and years ago. This is awful. I can't remember his name, but he was born with no arms and no legs.
Oh, yeah.
And he talked about when there was one interview I remember where he talked, because he was a motivational speaker, incredibly inspiring.
Yeah.
And he talked about when he met a young girl, a little girl who was born with similar kind of limited ability, and she was just blown away by the fact she had met someone else who was like her. And he said that he realised that sometimes we're not here to live our own dreams. We're perhaps here to help others live theirs. And he realised that he was inspiration for her to go on and do great things. Yeah. So it wasn't about what he was doing.
Very selfless.
And truly selfless. And I loved that. And that, maybe that's, as long as we're, what my granddad said, if you can't do someone a good turn, don't do them a bad one. So as long as I think you're trying to do some good in the world for yourself or others, then I think it's all good.
I think for others is even more important. Yeah, and I know that at a deep level, and I still get distracted from serving others. So it's still become, I'm the most important thing in the world at times. My business, my success, my career, everything that I'm doing. And this was another great argument in the book, Lost Focus. It's saying that it has all made us at some level narcissistic, because if you think what you do, like I'm an avid Instagram poster. I don't have it on my phone and laptop and stuff, but I will post daily. I like to put out content, but it is very self-centered. It is very like, and I do get wrapped up in that. I hope this gets well received. And you start to notice that, and you start to, everything does become about your results. I feel so great when I'm, for example, doing work for the homeless. I love doing that, and it's, by the way, I was changing, there was this homeless shelter, these guys were pissing in the beds and stuff, they were not well. And there's me mopping up the piss in the morning. But you know what? I've never felt so fulfilled, never felt so useful in my life. Not getting paid, helping take care of these guys. And it's like, well, how the fuck is that part of my day that I love? Yeah. It's weird, man. Yeah. But I'm like, there is something great in it. And then how we work with this now in the Better Man is we say, look, let's start with me. Let's get myself in order. Let's make myself useful, fit, healthy, in control, financially in an okay position. Yeah. Then I can really take good care of my family and my friends, because that's really rewarding. I love doing that now, being able to, take my mum and dad to Iceland, stuff like that, because I've got my own shit sorted. And then once we've got the family and friends things sorted, we're all on this mission now to, okay, how can I give back to my community and charities? So we do like the fundraising, even the leaving vouchers at Starbucks, and saying like, buy whoever comes in next to coffee, just those little things. Or a few of the lads are now setting up their own charities. It's almost like there's levels in life, I think. And once you've got your own shit sorted, you don't need the fanciest fucking car in the world. It's like, once you've got there's real joy in making other people's lives better. Yeah, completely. Real agree. Joy, real satisfaction. And that's the real work for me.
Yeah, and I think the thing to remember there is when you're working from that epicenter of yourself and slowly working out, that it doesn't have to go linear.
It overlaps.
You've got to keep coming. You've got to keep remembering to keep spinning the plates closest to you as well. Yeah. And then you're in a much better position. You've got this really solid base where you can go, I want to reach out there and do something over there, and I want to go and help with that, because you've got a solid base. But it's remembering that that base still needs nurturing.
Of course, absolutely, and you're right. It's so not like that simple. Like, I'll sort my own shell, because that's a forever game, by the way.
But it's so true, isn't it?
Of course,
you put your own mask on the flight before you help someone else. You don't put yourself at risk when you're trying to help someone else. And
absolutely,
it's all that kind of stuff, isn't it?
Yeah, I've been depressed at in my late 20s, and I was no good to anyone really. I know it sounds, but it's the truth. I couldn't look after anyone else. Couldn't look after myself. So it's like you've got no chance to look. So I kind of know that order exists.
Yeah.
But yeah, floating back and forward and making sure that it holds tight, I think, is the me thing. But then you do give more of your time. It's just a hard balance, because again, if you give everything to everyone else, there's little left for yourself. But there's also nourishment in giving to others for yourself too.
And I think the other thing to remember is by focusing on yourself and those closest to you, your learning skills. You're learning skills that are then transferable again. Yeah. We always used to say in Formula One that it's okay to make mistakes, because that's innovation. You're pushing boundaries, but it's not acceptable to make the same mistake twice. Partly because you either didn't learn from the mistake the first time round and put measures in place to prevent it happening again, or partly because you didn't even notice it going wrong. You didn't notice the mistake, and if you didn't notice it, then you're not even able to learn from it. And so by understanding yourself, you can spot common things that are likely to happen in others, and by having that understanding, you're more likely to be able to have empathy for others. Sure. and build that relationship that can help you go on to help them. So I think there's nothing lost by focusing on yourself, because you learn a lot of insights, you get a lot of information, there's new knowledge and skills that then you can apply when you're working with others, whether it's individuals or organisations or charities or whatever you're doing.
Definitely, and that's why I think it's good to suffer yourself too, and to put yourself through the hardship, because you can then, if you can understand what struggle is, you can have more empathy. If you know yourself well, it's far more easier to be compassionate.
Yeah.
And I'm talking about knowing the ugly parts about you too, because then you can be really compassionate. Because when someone fucks up, you're like, do you know what? I could fuck up too.
Yeah.
And I think this is where we don't want to get on these various levels where we've got this, people think they're so, on this pedestal. And I'm like, no. We're all capable, by the way, of fucking up. Very capable. And I even look at the homeless guys and I'm like, I don't think they're any different to us. They might have just had a fucking horrendous thing happen in their life. Maybe their parents fucking died, or who knows? Yeah. Just fucked them up in the head. And I'm like, yeah, we're human. We're all susceptible to that.
Right. A very different world. But my time in Formula One was a cruel mistress, and it's a great environment to be in, to level you. If you're a team that's winning races and you're getting a little bit confident, a little bit cocky, you can very quickly be at the back of the grid the very next race. And so one thing we never did in our teams was celebrate someone else's accident or mistake or failure, because absolutely it will be your turn next race. That's the way it works. So it's having that understanding and that being able to have that empathy. You've got to be able to having experienced it yourself gives you a better shot at guessing how someone else might be feeling. You can't, you can never say I know how you feel, because you're not them, but you can certainly imagine. You can certainly say, well, I've had something similar, this is my experience, so I can kind of relate. But that's
yeah, absolutely. It's another reason why some of the most kind of like other dojos are really respectful places to go, because if you get knocked out or you get tapped out, like you say, no one's jumping about celebrating. It's because that next round you're getting knocked out.
Exactly.
So it's kind of very humbling, and there's a lot of respect in that. So what would you say has been more of a challenge for you? Has it been through the fear of the physical world, getting knocked out, or is it when something comes along like a divorce that creates heartache? Like, what's the real fight?
Over time the physical stuff becomes normal. So working the door for many years, I remember the door work. When I felt fearful was when I stopped and then dipped my toe back in. Some of those nerves were back from when I first started. I used to be frightened all my way to driving to the actual shift, because what's going to happen tonight, Gradually it just becomes like, this is work, this is fine, this is normal, whatever happens, we've dealt with it. Stopping spinning that plate for a little while and going back in kind of triggered those fears again. So there's, there were tough times there, but definitely I think the tougher battle is the psychological ones. And so, yeah, things like divorce, things like falling out with family, relationship breakdowns in general is always has probably been some of the dark times. I've had there's been a few times where it's like, I know I can be quite insular at times. I know I can go into myself. I'm very good at my own company. I kind of enjoy my own company. I could that's why I love traveling. That's why I love long haul flights. I can just ignore everyone, get on the flight and just be in my own little world for 12 hours. But equally, I know that can become quite negative, where I actually don't want anyone around, or I can go into myself too much. So, and that's been triggered over the years on several occasions. Probably, certainly when I was at school, that was crying myself to sleep most nights when I was a teenager at school. That wasn't fun. Yeah, there's been a few times, but I'd say relationship breakdown, certainly with family's probably been unpleasant. Yeah.
Well, physically, you can learn how to defend yourself, can't you? You can learn that, you can be given a set of skills and it can work in most scenarios. But when it comes to heartache for men, it's like, well, where's the manual here, you know? And you don't know how to fight it. It's crippling. Yeah,
and I think that's why, having good people around you, having good support, Brother Mick, Brother Scott, family, brothers from other mothers. But I always say that they're the family you get to choose, and having people around like that when times are tough, that are gonna actually. I always say you can tell a friend when they're knocking the door, when they know it's gonna be uncomfortable to be your friend. When you're doing well, when you're popping champagne and you're winning, you have a lot of friends around you. When you're actually an unpleasant individual because you're not having a good time of it, that's when you see who's prepared to still show up. And because they know that they're probably going to get short shrift from you, and they're probably not going to get a welcome, but they know they still have to come because they're your friend. That's when you find your friends. And then you need to remember that's when you need to be a friend. Again, all good learning.
One of the saddest things I heard was when I was talking to my friend Al Dovey. He's a psychotherapist, really smart guy, and he was saying that he had a lot of friends, but he'd just gone through a breakup, and he was heartbroken, man. He said he was a bit of a mess at the time. He hit a low, and all the friends that he would go out with down the pub and have fun with, he said they just couldn't handle it. They couldn't handle seeing him like that or being around him when he was crying. It made them too uncomfortable, and so I suddenly realised how alone I was, when I'm here in this place. Like, no one wants to be around me. And he understood why. Yeah. And even his missus at that point said, you need to drag yourself out of this. And he said, fucking hell. He said, I've never felt so down and beat up and lonely in my life. All my friends have disowned me. And he said it's one of the most uncomfortable things is for a man to be around another man whilst he's emotionally vulnerable. Yeah. I get it.
Yeah,
I get it.
Yeah, and I have to thank the martial arts for helping with that, because you're doing Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, you're spending most days cuddling other men, and it's a great, the paradox of the whole thing is that you're there trying to strangle each other unconscious, trying to actually physically beat someone, but at the same time you're connected with them and you're actually trying to help each other get better. And you're doing it genuinely from a place of love, where you're trying to improve yourself, your own skills, but also the person with you. You're not going to be malicious. You're not going to take cheap shots. You're not going to cheat your way to the win. So you're going to be fair. You're going to be respectful of them. All the good things that come with martial arts, the etiquette, the budo, and I find that quite interesting. That there's two extreme ends of what you're trying to achieve here. But the fact that you're then comfortable with being around other individuals, male or female, that close, where you're trying to help each other, I think that then helps you when it comes to giving someone a hug who's struggling, or someone who's going to push you away because they actually, don't feel like they want anyone around because they're having a dark time, but they still need someone to be there.
Yeah.
It just gives you that, makes it all feel a little bit more familiar, if you like.
Yeah, you're right. It's very polar. I feel very safe at my club, even though, like you say,
They're trying to kill you.
Yeah, so that doesn't make sense, because I'm much safer at home on my sofa.
It's bizarre, isn't it?
But the thing is, if I know somebody walked in off the street into that dojo, right, and wanted to attack me, I know that I've got 40 people there that have got my back, and that is rare for a guy, and it feels fucking amazing.
Yeah.
That community, and we go on about this community thing all the time, but like underneath that message it's really, really important that you become part of a good community where you feel loved and looked after, and you have got people to love and look after too. Yeah. So that's the power of a group. I've got your back, you've got mine. We're going to do what's best for each other.
And what I love about it, and it's the same with doing any activity that you've fully immersed in. I did a taught a class many years ago for a kickboxing class. Came in as like a guest instructor, and the instructor's son, I think he was about 12 or 13, was having problems at school. And you turn up as a guest instructor and they immediately think you're Yoda or something, and you've got the answers to everything. I was like, no, I'm just going to teach you how to kick in the head. That's all I'm going to do today. And they said, oh, can you have a chat with him? And I was like, well, yeah, but I'm not, And when we got chatting, we realised that we probably can't fix the bullying thing. I can't magic away the bullies. I can't magic his confidence to go and deal with it in whatever way, shape or form. But what we could guarantee is that for 2 hours in that class, we could make that class so good that he had 2 hours of respite. He had 2 hours of not thinking about anything else other than what he was doing there with people who all loved him. And so if only his respite each week is a couple of sessions in that class, and that's all he gets from it, that's still pretty good.
It's awesome.
It's escape, it's respite. It might not fix the root problem, but at least it's gonna take the pressure off for a little while. It takes the weight off the bar for a bit. And so I think that's, for me, that's where I've always, whenever I've struggled, it's the training, it's the physical. So when I'm struggling mentally, bizarrely, it's the physical that can help relieve that pressure. Go and hit the bag, go for runs, get back into my training, get back into classes where I'm around people like, the awesome like Terry Barnett, that's been my kind of instructor more recently for the last 10, 15 years or so. People like that, you get around that company and it's like, okay, back with people that care.
Yeah, absolutely.
And back with people who aren't afraid to have a chat and question me and challenge me and empathize. And so it's an amazing thing. If for any sport, any social environment that you can immerse in like that, it fixes a lot of issues. Sure,
and I think that's the meaning of life, personally. What you've said, that you can alleviate that lad's suffering for 2 hours. I mean, fucking hell, that's epic. Isn't that beautiful? Yeah. But you can only do that, going back to the me thing, because you're the guy who will go running when he needs to, hit the bag when he needs to. So do you know what I mean? You kind of, and I think intrinsically we're motivated by that as men. It's like we know that if we stay strong, we can protect and put our arm around those young lads that need it.
Yeah.
Because as young guys, a lot of us don't have that, especially kids without like a father role model. They don't have anyone to put their arm around them. They might not meet a Jeff, or they might not meet like a Paul Mort who I met. They might never have that. They may never even I mean, how sad's that, or upsetting is that? They may never taste somebody that puts their arm around them and says, I can look after you and we can do better. It's really, really sad. This is why I empathise with some of the young lads in jail and stuff. I'm like, they probably just hadn't had any love.
Yeah. And I count my blessings, from a, great family, great parents, sisters amazing, looked out on, the people I've met along the way. Martial arts has introduced me to, my brother Mick and amazing friends and kind of extended family. So been very lucky, great influence from my parents, but I completely get that, I'm very fortunate and I shouldn't waste that, but there's a lot of people haven't had that opportunity, and and that's when it then becomes really difficult to kind of relate, because I haven't experienced that, and so
but we can take our
fraud if I sit there and go, I know how you feel.
I know, but we can take our fortunate circumstances, can't we, to help others that have been. Do you know what I mean? We're in a privileged position. This is why I don't think a guy should sit there and fucking wank off to pornography and watch Netflix with his life, because I'm like, you could be out helping somebody live a better life.
Yeah.
Because you've got all these luxuries.
So I was asked, we're in Singapore. Sounds really glamorous. We're in Singapore. It's a Saturday, early hours of Saturday morning, and we're having a chat over a few drinks with just some of the race team, and someone, like people come up with questions to trigger the chat. And someone said, would you rather be 10 times happier or 10 times wealthier? And it was interesting to see the answers around the table. I'll pose that to you.
What did you say?
Podcast you back. Yeah, would you rather be happier or wealthier?
Wealthier.
And that was my answer.
Yeah.
And it was very interesting around the table that a lot of people went for the PC option of, I'd rather be happier. It's not all about money. I was like, my answer was wealthier.
Yeah.
And I'd like to say, because I'm pretty happy as it is.
Sure.
I don't know how I could be 10 times happier. It's like having a bottle of wine that's £6 or £6,000. How can it be 1,000 times tasting better? But wealthier means I can help others. It gives me more opportunity to help others. My happiness, I can spread the love.
Sure.
But not really making a massive difference, or could finance help more ways?
Yeah, I'm with you. Straight away, like you say, the PC part of me was like, well, I should say happier. But I'm like, I knew it was wealthier.
Yeah.
Again,
and I know if there's no right or wrong answer, obviously, with that.
No.
But yeah, that was my option. But maybe then it's because I am, everyone would say I'm a bit money motivated. So that was in my head thinking, that's why I need to justify my answer, that it's not just because, I want the next Porsche or whatever.
I've got a guy at the minute I'm mentoring. He's driven to earn a lot of money at the minute, but guess what he's doing with the money? He's putting it back into his community.
Yeah.
And that's what's driving him. And I'm like, yeah, and you need the money to do that.
Yeah.
So he needs the money to pay his own mortgage, to look after his family, and now he's setting up this charity. He's working with hospices. Yeah. Brilliant. And that's his motivation. So happiness has never really interested me that much. Like all the best, no, it's not. All the best things, like say the fighting that you've done, the BJJ that I'm done. Am I happy when I'm getting strangled? No, but I'm happy with the growth that comes from it. Am I happy when I'm mopping piss off the floor of the homeless shelter? Not really, but I feel fucking great after I've done it. I feel useful. I wouldn't say happy. I don't really get that word, like you say. But I think you can chase... People who chase happiness, they chase permanent states of pleasure. Yeah. That's the worry with happiness. So I'm happy when I'm around my family, watching TV, comfortable, warm, no worries. And I'm like... Well, good luck chasing that, man. Yeah. That's how I believe you get overweight, unfulfilled. Yeah. Those pleasures tip over, don't they?
You're tripping over tennis to pick up a fiver. You're missing.
You got so many of these talks.
I love a quote, mate.
I know you do. I've noticed.
I might do a book of quotes. But yeah, you're too busy chasing something. Yeah. And missing the fun bit. It's like proper cliche, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
The fun along the way.
Yeah. Most of these cliches are true, to be fair. What advice would you give your younger self?
Be more patient. We kind of touched on it.
Okay.
I was always rushing to try and accomplish things and get another certificate in this and study another art, or just trying to pack it all in, cram everything in, and it was tiring. And I think, don't get me wrong, there's plenty of people done a lot more than me, but I'd say just be patient, don't sweat it. When I'm talking to young students, there are jobs now that exist that didn't even exist when I was at school. AI, machine learning, virtual reality, they weren't even things when I was at school. That's how old I am. So to not know what I want to become when I'm 16, well, what I'm going to become probably doesn't exist yet anyway.
Sure.
So don't sweat it, and that would be my advice. Just, but then don't regret anything either. I've said yes and done lots of things, and they've all been that meandering journey to give me the stories when I finally arrive at the party. And so, say yes to stuff, experience it, but put yourself under pressure a little bit.
Regrets are another thing that are a bit like the happiness thing. I'm like, I welcome regrets because they kind of drive me towards different behaviours.
Yeah.
So when I look back at the things I regret, I'm like, well, there's an answer of what not to fucking do again.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? So
it's learning from your mistakes.
Yeah. So I have loads of regrets, loads, but I like to think that they help me to create a better future or a better present.
Yeah.
Because the things that hurt me the most, I'm like, well, why did they hurt me the most? Yeah. What was it? When we went back to like who you show up as. Often your regrets, if you underlying, is how you behaved and how you acted.
Yeah.
So a lot of mine come from, like I said, the way I mistreated people, for example.
Yeah.
I don't like that person.
Yeah.
So there's the regret, showing up like that.
Yeah.
It's not that my business failed when I was 28 and I lost all my money. I can handle that. But being a cunt, basically, sorry, Al.
It's all right, mate.
That's what hurts me. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, and yeah, again, it's that back to learning. Formula One again. There's a book soon. There's a book that needs to come out that is my life lessons from F1, because there's so many analogies and parallels. But you cannot innovate, you cannot create, you cannot push boundaries without getting some things wrong. Otherwise, all the best drivers take the car just beyond the limit so that they know where it is. Otherwise, you never quite know how close you were. Yeah. Could I have pushed it a little bit more? And so it's about knowing then that you are going to have mistakes, and as a result, you accept that that's part of the process and not something to be annoyed at or have regret around. But that notion of winners and learners, it's about learning from those mistakes and making sure they don't happen twice. Making sure that if you've got something you regret, well, let's analyze it. Let's figure out why. What makes it a regret? What makes it a regrettable incident? And if that's true and that's genuine, then what can we learn about that? What can we do differently next time? We when we're teaching leadership programs, we have this what next. So what happened. What did we learn from that? But the important bit is what next? What are we going to do differently next time as a result? Otherwise, we'll just keep repeating the same mistakes.
Which is quite a common thing, right, for people not to go to that third pillar.
Yeah, exactly. That's active reflection. It's something we actually teach on how to actively reflect on a lesson, learnings, an event, a project, an outcome, whatever it might be. But not to forget that step 3. What am I going to do differently as a result next time? How do I show up differently as a result next time? Otherwise, you're not really learning from your mistakes. You're acknowledging them, you're analysing them, and then just chucking it on a shelf, parking it. But you've got to do that for the wins as well. We all say, you learn most from your losses. But you can learn a lot from your wins, providing you're prepared to analyse it and not just run and drink the champagne. So, make sure you're self-critical, or you're critical in every situation.
Yeah, I write 5 wins down every single day, and I've done for years, because I'm notoriously good at pulling myself apart and noticing what I haven't done well or what. So now I'm actually, and again, there's good evidence there. If wins are coming up, you're more likely to do those behaviours because you've recorded them as wins. So you get what you look for. Yeah. So if you look for the good behaviours, you'll be driven towards doing more of those. Absolutely. And you'll start to think, if you collect wins each day, you'll go, right, well, what can I do today that would warrant being a win? Yeah. Can I buy that person a coffee? Can I do a great podcast with Al? Can I... It's been all right, mate. Do you know what I mean? So you can kind of start creating your day rather than just hoping that good things come along.
And take charge of it, be proactive.
Yeah. What would be in your book then, Al, if you were going to write one? Like, would it be lessons about life? Would it be how to develop more resilience? Because you've done that.
I'm not any kind of therapist or counsellor, so I have to be very careful that I'm not going to be this pseudo therapist that's got loads of faux wisdom.
Yeah, but you share your stuff, right? And what you've learned.
It would be my story. I think that the premise of what needs to come out for me personally is that analogy between what shaped me in my early years from the martial arts world. There's so much to learn there, more than just about being able to choke someone out or kick someone in the head. There's so much more. It's more than that, and how you can then take that and apply that to any other aspect of your life. And my illustration of that, my proof of the pudding, is that what I learned in martial arts in terms of the way, etiquette, leadership skills, I've also seen in the world I've been really lucky to work in for half my career in motorsport. The things that make a team work well, all of the attributes, all of the elements of a really high performing team in my world of Formula One, I've seen parallels with what I learned in martial arts as a student and an instructor. And I now see parallels in the people that I also work with who have come from other backgrounds, but can also have lived experience, can prove that it works. So my story would be saying, don't just take my word for it. Here's an example of where it works. And Formula One's just full of these little life lessons, from whether it's about, you know, the winners and learners, win as a team, lose as a team, sticking together, you know, attention to detail, continual improvement, you know, change management, how to never be quite satisfied, that there's always something you can do better tomorrow, even no matter how small. And often it's the really tiny changes that make the difference. They add up. And it goes, and I could go on and on and on. There's so many lessons that are from this like abstract world of martial arts that's not, you know, this is cars going around a racetrack. It's not like someone climbing a mountain. It's not human, you know, accomplishment. This is teamwork. This is engineering. This is technology. It's a sport. But there's a huge number of parallels from there that you know, or lessons from there that we can take into our own personal lives. And you know, a great example, you're an athlete, you're lean, you know the importance of being fit for purpose. A Formula One car is completely fit for purpose. There's nothing on that car that's there by accident or that's there for show, except for the logos that are stuck on the outside. And even the thickness of those logos and the weight of those logos is thought about and considered. And so you're designing something that is absolutely fit for purpose. It doesn't have any furry dice hanging from the mirror. It doesn't have a caravan or baggage on the back that it's dragging around. So apply that to you as a human being. How can I get fit for purpose? What do I want to do? How can I be better at it? So be lean, be athletic, be psychologically, mentally strong, you know, healthy. So we could go on.
I love that.
You get the idea.
Yeah.
So there's a million
fit for purpose. That's what you should call your book.
Analogies. Fit for purpose. Yeah. Well, I was going to call it Winning Formula, but David Coulthard's done his book called that, so he's stolen it. Yeah,
forget David Coulthard. Fit for purpose. I absolutely love that, and this is why I'm glad you weren't so patient, because you're a great guy to learn from. So this is how I can take anything and say, because of your lack of patience, you've done all these things, you've got all these lessons, you've lived a life, right? And you're still a young guy, sort of.
Yeah.
I'll give you that one. Well, I've got to be nice. I know you're a fighter now.
Well, I look young. Yeah.
Of course. So I'm like, you're the kind of man we want to be learning from.
That's very generous, but I'm very.
I know you're very humble. I know you don't like. I can tell you don't like a compliment too much. You're looking at the floor now, looking away.
I don't think I've done anything that's particularly spectacular. Certainly, when I look at the people I work with. Now,
listen to me. Listen to me. Listen to me. Fighting for a lot of men is one of the biggest fears. Confrontation. Honestly, I promise you. I know this firsthand.
My biggest achievement, more so than that, because a lot of the fighting, you've got no choice. You're in it. You know, you sort of, what am I going to do? The scarier thing for me, and I think for a lot of people, is the public speaking that I do and have done.
Yeah.
But the fighting's helped me with that.
Fear's fear, right?
Yeah.
Fear is fear.
The interesting thing, same as fighting, there's a big difference between having the courage to get on stage and speak, or the courage to get in the ring, and the ability to do it. And so just because someone says, well, I can get on stage, I can public speak, you've got the courage to get on stage.
Doesn't mean you're any good.
Doesn't mean you're any good at it. And I'm still very
well, I'm like that in the fighting world. I've got some balls, but I'm fucking terrible.
Me too. What was it they say? I'm a 45 years into a 99-year project. That's me. I'm still very much a work in progress.
Yeah, well, I had the guts to step in the ring with Glenn Smith, and that didn't work out very well. It didn't. Yeah, you see this nose?
There's from Glenn.
My whole facial fucked up features are from Glenn. But
there's a machine for you right there.
Yeah. I've got one more question, if I may.
Oh my goodness.
I know this is the big one.
Okay.
I ask everyone this. What do you need to work on now in order to become a better man?
I'd say my patience.
Still.
Yeah. And I'd say my consideration of others. I don't ring my parents enough. Okay. So if I was to transfer that to everything else, then patience would then hopefully take me away from being too insular and too, kind of focusing on what I'm doing, and actually spend a bit more time thinking about everyone around me. I'm terrible for that, and so that's my big failing.
Well, that one about calling your parents is important. And if I may, I can speak firsthand on this. I take every Thursday off now to spend time with my mum and dad.
Oh, lovely.
You know, we talked about regrets. I know that will be a regret if I don't do it when they're not here.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
absolutely.
Again, future pacing regrets is also quite useful.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, absolutely.
So I like that. Mate, what a pleasure that was. Oh, you had some fun. Yeah.
No, it was good. Thank you.
That was difficult because, like I say, I could have talked about so many different areas of your life.
Yeah.
But I wanted to go back to the rawness
no
of.
one needs to hear all of that.
Well, mate, like I say, it was difficult to write your bio. I was like, you've fucking done so much. Usually people are known for one thing.
Yeah.
You're unique in that sense, which is great because it's like we talk about motorsport and we can talk about the corporate, we can talk about Fieri, we can talk about fighting. It was like, right, yeah, okay.
Yeah,
so.
Bit of a jack of all trades, which is often seen as a negative, but the martial arts was a classic, you know, and Jeff's big thing was around, let's get decent in every range. As long as we can hold our own, you know, I held my own with Glenn Smith in the boxing ring in boxing rules for 3 rounds. That's about all I could just about do, you know, and I ended up looking like he definitely looked like he'd won. So I was never going to be a world champion boxer, world champion judo player, world champion karateka, but piecing it all together, we actually got very good at being jacks of all trades. We were brilliant jacks of all trades. And so, you know, from a fighting perspective, it meant that we could hopefully take people to a range they weren't very good at. And if we were just slightly above average in every one, you know, it's like a triathlete, I guess. They're going to be a pretty decent, you know, 5K, 20K, you know, 10K half marathon runner. They're going to be a pretty decent cyclist and swimmer. They're not going to be world champion in any individual discipline, but they're still pretty good in each of those ranges. And piece it together, they are, you know, the best in the world at triathlons. We were the same in martial arts, all we wanted to be. And I think that's, you know, UFC kind of has taken it to another level. But yeah, so
life's a buffet, you know. It's nice to try different things,
isn't it? Just
so, mate, thank you so much. I appreciate your time.
No, I appreciate it.
That was awesome. No, thank you. Cheers, Al.